There are moments in journalism when the story behind the story matters more than the headline itself. When the person watching from the sidelines finally steps forward, not for attention, not for credit, but because silence has become its own kind of dishonesty. This is one of those moments. Tom Brokaw, a man who spent more than 4 decades as one of America's most trusted voices in news, a man who sat behind the NBC nightly news desk through some of the most defining chapters of modern American history, has reached a point in his life where certain truths feel too important to leave unsaid. He is 86 years old now. He has earned the right to speak plainly. And what he has chosen to speak about is Savannah Guthrie. Not her career, not her ratings, not her professional achievements, but something far more personal and far more revealing. The woman behind the anchor desk. The daughter behind the composed face. The human being behind the carefully constructed public image that millions of Americans have come to recognize as simply Savannah. What Brokaw has shared in recent weeks, through quiet conversations with longtime colleagues and former NBC staff members, paints a portrait of Savannah Guthrie that the viewing public has never fully seen. It is a portrait drawn not with criticism, but with something closer to deep professional respect mixed with genuine human concern. Because Tom Brokaw, who has observed Savannah Guthrie up close for many years, believes there is a story about her that America deserves to understand. A story not about her talent, which has never been in question, but about the invisible architecture that has shaped everything she does on camera and off. To understand Savannah Guthrie, Brokaw has suggested, you must first understand where she comes from. Not geographically, not professionally, but emotionally. You must understand the household she grew up in, the values that were handed to her before she was old enough to question them, and the standard of excellence that was set so high, so early, that she has spent her entire adult life reaching toward it. That standard did not come from a television producer or a network executive. It came from her mother. Savannah Guthrie was born in 1971 and raised largely in Tucson, Arizona. Her father, Charles Guthrie, passed away when Savannah was still a teenager, leaving her mother, Nancy Guthrie, to raise 3 children on her own. By all accounts, Nancy Guthrie was not a woman who allowed circumstances to define her limitations. She was, according to those who knew the family, a woman of remarkable discipline, quiet strength, and deeply held convictions about what it meant to carry yourself with dignity in a world that would test you at every turn. She raised her children, including Savannah, with a clear and consistent message. The world does not reward weakness. Excellence is not optional. You represent this family everywhere you go. Those who knew Savannah in her early years at NBC describe a young woman who walked into 30 Rockefeller Plaza carrying something invisible but unmistakable. She was polished, yes. She was prepared, absolutely. But beyond her professional readiness, there was a quality about her that veterans of the newsroom noticed immediately. She never seemed to need approval. She never seemed rattled by criticism. She never broke stride when things got difficult. At an age when most young journalists are still finding their footing, still learning when to push back and when to absorb, Savannah Guthrie already moved through the building like someone who had been training for this her whole life. Because, in every meaningful sense, she had been. Tom Brokaw noticed it early. In conversations he has had with former colleagues in recent months, he has described watching Savannah navigate the early years of her NBC career with something approaching quiet amazement. Not because her talent surprised him, talent was obvious from the beginning, but because of the way she managed herself under pressure. Television news is a brutally unforgiving environment. Deadlines are real. Mistakes are public. The camera catches everything. A nervous swallow, a flicker of uncertainty, a half-second of doubt. Most anchors, even experienced ones, carry visible traces of stress when things go sideways. Savannah, from the beginning, seemed to operate inside a different framework entirely. Brokaw has described it this way. There are broadcasters who learn composure through years of experience, through making mistakes, through being burned enough times that they develop a kind of professional armor. And then there are broadcasters who arrive already armored. Savannah Guthrie, in his observation, was the second kind. The armor was not something she built at NBC. The armor was something she brought with her, something forged long before she ever sat in front of a camera professionally, in a household where strength was not celebrated so much as simply expected. This observation, coming from Tom Brokaw, carries enormous weight. This is not a man who dispenses compliments carelessly. This is not a man who speaks loosely about the people he has worked with. For decades, Brokaw was the standard-bearer at NBC News. He anchored the network through the fall of the Berlin Wall, through September 11th, through presidential elections that shifted the direction of the country. He has interviewed world leaders, sat with generals, spoken to families in the depths of unimaginable grief. He knows what genuine composure looks like, and he knows the difference between composure that is performed and composure that is structural, woven into a person at such a foundational level that it functions almost like a second nervous system. What Brokaw has said, carefully and deliberately, is that Savannah Guthrie's composure belongs in that second category. It is not a mask she puts on for the cameras. It is the operating system she runs on. And understanding that, he believes, is the key to understanding everything else about her. Consider the arc of her career. Savannah Guthrie did not arrive at the Today Show through luck or timing alone. She worked as a broadcast journalist, built a reputation as a sharp legal analyst, and earned every step of her ascent through demonstrated competence and relentless preparation. When she was eventually offered the co-anchor chair on Today, one of the most watched morning programs in American television history, it was not a surprise to those who had watched her closely. What might have surprised an outside observer was how she received that news. Not with visible euphoria, not with the kind of emotional release that such a career-defining moment would seem to warrant, but with a kind of steady, measured acknowledgement. Here is the next assignment. Let us execute it correctly. People who were around her during that period have described a woman who seemed almost more focused in the days following her promotion than before it. As if the achievement itself was simply confirmation that the preparation had been adequate, and now the real work of living up to the new responsibility had to begin. That orientation, toward the next standard to be met rather than the milestone just cleared, is not something that develops spontaneously in adulthood. That is a habit of mind that is built over years, reinforced through repetition, and ultimately becomes indistinguishable from personality. Tom Brokaw, in speaking about Savannah to those close to him, has not framed any of this as criticism. He has been careful and consistent about that. He is not suggesting that the way she was raised was wrong, or that the values instilled in her by her mother were damaging in any simple sense. Nancy Guthrie raised a daughter who became one of the most respected journalists in American television. By any conventional measure, the parenting philosophy worked. What Brokaw is pointing toward is something more nuanced, more tender, and in some ways more difficult to articulate. He is pointing toward the cost. The invisible, ongoing, never fully settled cost of operating inside a framework where excellence is the floor, not the ceiling, and where allowing yourself to be visibly human in moments of vulnerability is experienced not as authenticity but as failure. In practical terms, what does that cost look like? It looks like a woman who, by the accounts of those who know her well, almost never fully lets her guard down. Not because she is cold or unfeeling. Those who have spent time with her privately describe someone who is deeply warm, genuinely funny, and capable of extraordinary empathy. But because the habit of guardedness runs so deep that even in safe spaces, even among people she trusts completely, there is always some part of Savannah Guthrie that remains at attention. Watchful. Monitoring. Measuring the distance between what she is feeling and what she is allowing to show. Brokaw has spoken about specific moments over the years when he glimpsed what he describes as the real Savannah, the one underneath the professional architecture. Moments when something caught her off guard, when the news was personal enough or painful enough that the training briefly fell away. What struck him in those moments, he has said, was not the emotion itself, but how quickly she moved to contain it. A few seconds at most. Long enough for an observer to catch a flash of what was genuinely there. And then it was gone, smoothed over, redirected into something manageable and controlled. He has said that watching it happen was like watching someone simultaneously feel something and apologize to themselves for feeling it. That dynamic, he believes, traces directly back to the household she grew up in. Not because Nancy Guthrie was a cruel parent, by all indications she was a devoted and loving mother, but because the circumstances of that household, particularly following the loss of Savannah's father, created an environment where emotional restraint was not just valued but functionally necessary. A single mother raising 3 children has limited bandwidth for extended emotional processing. The family that survives and thrives in those circumstances is often the family that learns to compartmentalize, to keep moving, to not let grief or fear or uncertainty slow down the forward momentum that survival requires. Savannah Guthrie absorbed that lesson completely, and she has carried it with her every day of her professional life. What Brokaw finds both admirable and quietly heartbreaking about this is the loyalty it represents. Savannah Guthrie is, in his assessment, one of the most genuinely loyal people he has encountered in decades of working alongside high-profile journalists and public figures. Her loyalty to the standards she was raised with is not performative. It is not strategic. It is the expression of a deep and abiding love for the woman who set those standards, and a continuing desire, even now, even at the height of a remarkable career, to be worthy of that love. To demonstrate, through continued excellence, continued composure, continued forward momentum, that the investment Nancy Guthrie made in raising her the way she did was not wasted. That the price paid was worth it. There is something profound and very human in that. Most of us, if we are honest with ourselves, carry some version of this, some internal audience made up of the people whose approval mattered most to us when we were young, whose voices we still hear in quiet moments, whose standards still shape our choices even when they are long gone from our daily lives. For Savannah Guthrie, that audience has a specific face and a specific voice, and the remarkable thing, the thing that Tom Brokaw has been quietly marveling at for years, is how consistently she rises to meet it. Day after day, broadcast after broadcast, crisis after crisis. He has also spoken, with equal candor, about what he hopes for her. Not professionally, her professional future seems as secure as any anchor in the business, but personally. He has expressed, to those he trusts, a quiet hope that Savannah Guthrie eventually finds a way to give herself permission to be fully human. Not just in private, not just in brief, quickly contained moments, but in a way that allows her to experience the full range of her own emotional life without the automatic reflex of self-correction. He believes she is capable of that. He also knows it would require dismantling something that has been structural since childhood, and that kind of dismantling is not a weekend project. It is the work of years, possibly the work of a lifetime. What makes Tom Brokaw's perspective on all of this so valuable is precisely the vantage point from which it comes. He is not a psychologist speculating about someone from a distance. He is not a critic looking for angles. He is a man who sat in that building for decades, who watched careers begin and end, who saw the full spectrum of how human beings behave when the cameras are on and when they are off. He has seen anchors who were magnetic on screen and hollow in person. He has seen others who were unremarkable on camera but extraordinary human beings in private. And then there are the rare ones, the ones who are genuinely remarkable in both directions, whose public excellence is an authentic expression of something real and deep, rather than a carefully maintained facade. Savannah Guthrie, in his view, belongs in that last category. Her excellence is real. Her preparation is real. Her commitment to the work is real. But so is the cost of maintaining that standard without rest, without visible struggle, without the kind of public vulnerability that might, paradoxically, make her even more beloved to the audiences who already admire her so deeply. There is a generation of viewers who have grown up watching Savannah Guthrie anchor some of the most important news moments of recent decades. Presidential debates, election nights, natural disasters, national tragedies. In all of it, she has been a steady, reliable, trustworthy presence. The anchor who does not panic. The journalist who does not sensationalize. The professional who brings clarity to confusion and steadiness to moments of national uncertainty. Those qualities are not incidental to her public identity. They are its core. And they were not manufactured by a television network. They were built by a woman in Tucson, Arizona, who raised her daughter to believe that steadiness was not just a virtue but a form of love. Tom Brokaw understands that. He respects it deeply. And at 86 years old, with the kind of perspective that only comes from having watched the world for as long as he has simply reached a point where he wants people to know the full picture. Not to diminish Savannah Guthrie, not to expose her, not to reduce her to a psychological case study, but to honor her more completely. To say, here is a remarkable woman, and here is the remarkably human story underneath the remarkable career. Here is what it actually costs to be this consistent, this prepared, this composed, across this many years, across this many cameras, across this many moments where the human impulse would be to simply fall apart. Because the willingness to pay that cost, day after day, year after year, is not just professionalism. It is devotion. Devotion to a craft, yes, but more fundamentally, devotion to a set of values and to the woman who instilled them. And that devotion, Tom Brokaw believes, is the truest and most complete thing you can say about who Savannah Guthrie actually is. She is not simply a television anchor. She is not simply a journalist. She is a daughter who has spent her entire adult life trying to be worthy of her mother's highest expectations, and succeeding, spectacularly, by almost every measure available. The fact that that success carries an invisible weight, a weight that most viewers will never see and Savannah herself may rarely acknowledge, does not diminish it. If anything, according to Brokaw, it makes it more impressive, more human, more worth understanding. At 86, Tom Brokaw is not a man with an agenda. He is not positioning himself for something. He is not trying to redefine his legacy or settle old scores. He is simply a man who has seen a great deal, who cares deeply about the people he has worked alongside, and who believes that the full truth about remarkable people is always more interesting and more instructive than the simplified version that makes it onto the highlight reel. The full truth about Savannah Guthrie, as he sees it, is this. She is one of the finest journalists of her generation, shaped by loss and discipline, and an extraordinary mother into someone capable of doing what very few people can do under the pressures that come with her kind of public life. And she has done it, is still doing it, with a grace and consistency that deserves not just professional admiration but genuine human recognition. Recognition not just of the achievement, but of what it has required. Recognition of the woman behind the anchor desk, still performing, still meeting the standard, still reaching toward the approval that has always mattered most. Tom Brokaw wanted people to know that, not because it changes anything about how we watch the news, but because it deepens our understanding of what it actually means to be the person delivering it. And at 86, he decided that was worth saying out loud.